I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was 39 years old. When you've gotten knocked down 2 times and then 3 times, you just don't understand why. I absolutely wanted to give up. I was over it. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. My whole motto for 2020 was "Come, Lord Jesus, come." I just wanted him to come back so that I didn't have to deal with it anymore. I think I've always had a pretty strong faith, but going through it all has made my faith grow. Watching my sister go through it and how she handled herself and how, she pointed to God in every breath she took helped me learn that strength too. I definitely had days where I didn't have hope, where I just felt so beat down. I had to just refocus on who God is. I have definitely learned to be patient in this journey. I couldn't even count how many doctor's appointments I've been to, and of course you wait at a doctor's appointment. And then you might get tested, and then you wait for the test results. Or you're just waiting for the surgery date to get the tumor out because you don't want it there anymore. Waiting is hard. There's a thing called scanxiety, where you have this anxiety of what your scans are going to come back. After one of my scans, I had to wait weeks before they were done, and every single day it feels like a year. It's hard to be patient while you're waiting. But then I'm in a perpetual season of waiting because I'm always waiting to see what's going to happen next. On the negative side, when is it coming back? On a positive side, maybe I can not have cancer ever again.
So in 2002, young man, 27 years old, named Aaron Ralston. It's a picture of him on your screen. Aaron worked as an engineer for Intel and decided that that wasn't quite what he wanted his job to be. Decided his job was a little too boring, a little too predictable, and he wanted to change a pace. So he decided to quit his job and become a professional mountaineer. Which, who doesn't, right? Like, who ever decides, I'm going to quit my job? What are you going to do? I'm going to be a professional mountain climber. But that's what Aaron decided. He was going to climb mountains for a living at 27 and left Intel. And he decided, as part of his early kind of career mark in the industry, he was going to climb all of Colorado's 14ers, which, oh, there you go. I knew I was going to do that at one point or another. I was going to step on those and either kick them off or slip and fall on them. Let's hope I don't slip and fall on them. So he decided to climb all the 14ers in Colorado. The 14ers are mountains that breach 14,000 feet. There is 58 of them in Colorado, or 53, depending on who you talk to. If you want to go down a fun rabbit hole, it is a really weird argument in the climbing world, whether there's 53 or 58, depending on how you define the summit. But there's a lot of them. And so he decided that he was going to climb all of them and add that kind of to his early list of his mountaineering exploits as he became a professional climber. And so Aaron, actually a year in 2003, had started to develop a pretty impressive climbing resume already. And he decided one day that he was going to break form from the mountains in Colorado, and he went to Utah, and instead of scaling up, he was going to do some canyon climbing, which is a little different technique. So he was a good climber at this point, but had made a couple of mistakes on this particular day. One is he was going outside of his norm in terms of his climbing ability and experience. And in doing that, he made a couple of mistakes that could have been even more costly than they ended up being. Number one mistake was he told no one where he was going. Number 2 mistake is he climbed completely alone. And number 3 mistake was he brought no kind of communication. No phone or anything else was there to be an accident. So most of the day was going fine. He was scaling canyon walls, but on his way down, he was passing a boulder that he had passed earlier that day on the way up. It was determined later on that the boulder was about 800 pounds. And for reasons that Aaron will never understand, that boulder lodged itself free after he had passed several feet below it. And so that boulder, as it shook itself free, began to come down the canyon walls. He tried to scurry out of the way. The long and the short of it is that boulder came down and wedged itself again at a lower place in the canyon. Only this time when it wedged itself between the canyon wall and his arm. And so from just below his elbow down, his arm ends up completely pinned against the canyon wall. And so he didn't have a lot of food. He didn't have a lot of water. This was not supposed to be a multi-day climb. And so he's sitting there trying to figure out, after you can imagine all the pain and all the panic subsides a little bit, what to do. And hours grow into a day. And a day grows into 2 days. And 2 days into 3 days. And 3 days into 4 days. And he's now depleted all of his water. He's depleted all of his food. He's in way beyond just a panic state. He has no idea what he's going to do at this point, but he knows he doesn't have much left in him. And then he's into day 5. And in day 5, he realizes if he doesn't do something drastic, he's going to die there, pinned to the side of that mountain. And at that point, his arm had actually begun to decay. His arm was destroyed completely by the crush between the canyon wall and the boulder. And so Aaron has this idea that the only way he can save himself is to remove his arm. So he goes into his backpack where he finds, thankfully, a small pocket knife that he did pack, but it was as dull as you can imagine. And with that pocket knife, he begins to probe his own arm and realizes that with the decay, although there is pain, that he can probably get through it even with this knife not being very sharp. The problem is it wasn't going to get through the bone. There is a movie that's been made out of his story called 127 Hours that you can watch. You can get all the gory details if you would like. But I'll give you the short version. Aaron decided at one point that to break his bones, he would have to leverage his own body weight up and then down to snap both of them in his wrist. And then proceeded after that to cut through with the knife. And then he took the hose off of his camelback backpack, wrapped it around his arm as a tourniquet, climbed down, hiked out of the canyon, even though he was barely conscious, passed a puddle of water that had a dead bird in it that was in there when he passed in for the climb 5 days earlier. But he was so desperate at that point that he drank out of the water, which if you've already cut off your arm, I guess drinking dead bird water isn't a big deal. And he passed a family that was actually coming in just for a day hike. And so they were able to call in for rescue. Chopper came, got him out of the canyon, and eventually did save his life, but unfortunately not his arm. And they would go back later on. They would remove the boulder. That's where they realized it was 800 pounds, find the remains of his arm, and they had a whole ceremony where he buried it. Aaron would go on to become a famous climber, both for his climbing ability and the things that he's accomplished, but also more so for reasons that he probably never wanted to be famous for. What we said last week, and we're going to jump right back into where we left off last week, is that there are times in life where our lives and the situation in our lives can go so upside down that it feels like we just get stuck in these moments we don't want to be in. And it can feel a little bit like Aaron, like you're just wedged against the canyon wall and you're not really sure how you got there or how in the world you're going to get out of it. And those aren't just like the situations of life, they're also spiritual situations. Matter of fact, I would say the situations in life put us into a very similar kind of spiritual situation that we termed last week as the dip. We called it the dip of despair. We kind of took that name, if you remember, and we based it off of a spot going up the south side of Mount Everest called the Hillary Step. It is a spot where just shy of summiting Everest, you actually have to go down into this kind of valley dip before you ascend this 40-foot rock wall to actually get to the summit of Everest. So you've got to do this kind of dip down before you go up. And we said last week that there's this reality in life that there are moments that things can come into our life with such just ferocity and such just pain and just unexpected, that it's like it pins us against the wall. It puts us in a dip. It kind of flips everything upside down where we're in this place of despair going, God, I don't know where you're at. I don't know why you're letting this happen. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. And we just start having these moments where we do what really Habakkuk taught us to do last week, is where we start to wrestle with God in these places. Places that aren't just places of pain, but they're places of question. Matter of fact, I would say oftentimes they're places of pain because they're places in our life of question. They are situations of question. Like, God, why aren't you answering something? Why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you healing someone? Why aren't you showing up and responding to this moment? Why does she have cancer? Will the anxiety always overwhelm me, or will I be able to overcome it? And so these places of pain become pain because of the questions. And they're painful enough just because of what they are. But what makes these moments even worse is when they just drag on and on and on and on. I mean, most of us have the ability to endure a season of virtually anything, I would say. A friend of mine always says that. You can go through anything for a season. But what about when the season becomes a lifetime? What about when it seems like it's just season after season after season after? What about when it's not 1 hour, but it's 10, or it's 20, or it's 36, or it becomes 127? Because part of what can happen when we're in these places of this pit that don't pass through quickly, but it feels like we live there for way longer than we want to be there, is we can become kind of desperate like Aaron, to a point that if we're not careful, we can actually end up spiritually mutilating ourselves, where we essentially conclude all the wrong things about God, and in doing so, we cut ourselves off from him. And so the question today that we're going to wrestle with is not just so much, God, where are you? But God, how long will you let this happen? How long is this going to last? And even more so, how in the world do I survive it when it doesn't feel like it's just a passing season, but it feels like it's a season that's never ending? How do I survive it? So I want to take a minute. I just want to pray, ask God to speak as clear as I know that he can and can be heard, and just lead us through this morning again like I believe he did last week. So Father, we come to you this morning. And God, I have a sense already, God, that there is a fight for our hearts and minds today. That there is a battle right now to keep us from trusting you in the deepest ways and places. To conclude what our situations in life would have us to believe about you instead of what you would have us to believe about you. And I just know that anytime there is a lie about who you are and what you do and how you can be trusted, anytime there is a lie about the fact that you do indeed have good plans, you never fail, that those lies come straight from the enemy. And so God, I just say this morning, in the name of Jesus, enemy, you have no place or no power here. And so be gone. That we would hear, Holy Spirit, from you this morning. We would hear clearly with no filter and no barrier. That we would hear your voice, that we would feel your comfort. God, for those of us in the room convinced that that there is a God, that you, Jesus Christ, are him, would you draw us close to you? For those of us in the room, those of us maybe listening online that really aren't sure if there is a God, if you're him, God, would you be tender and gentle and close and clear as to invite all of us, whether we believe that you're there, whether we're not sure, whether we're somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, would you just do what only you can do, to speak to us with clarity, with compassion, with tenderness. God, you have told us in your word that you are close to the brokenhearted. And so God, for any of us in this room that have brokenheartedness that we're living with right now, would you do, Dad, what only you can do, to be close to us in a fatherly way and in a gentle way that may not give us answers that we want, but will provide for us strength that we need. Thank you that you are good. Thank you that your plans are good. And thank you that we can trust you above all the circumstances in life that would have us to even believe different. It's in your name I pray. Amen. Hey, we're going to quickly, before we go any further, I want to take up our offering this morning and just let you know how much, as I've been saying the last couple weeks, I just really value and appreciate you for what we get to do together as a church, the impact that we're having locally, the impact that we're having regionally, the impact that we're having even globally right now is because of so many different factors, not just because of the giving, but that is a part of what helps us have the impact that we have. I even, just being newer to Ridgepoint, learned that we've got this thing coming up called Reach and Restore. If you're part of Ridgepoint for any length of time, you know about Reach and Restore. And I am blown away that there's a Sunday that we decide to take everything that comes in and give it away, and just try and bless everything outside of our doors to no personal direct benefit of ourselves. Like, I hope you know, like, that's kind of weird, right? Weird only in that a lot of churches would never even think of doing that. And I think it's weird in a really good way. And so I just want to say, man, what a privilege it is to be a part of a community that is just so generous. So we got people that are going to come forward right now with buckets, and they're going to pass those around. And I just want to say thank you so much for all that you do to make this place, this community, and its impact happen all around this world. And if you know what to do, then you know what to do. If you're new to this, then we would just invite you to be a part of it. I would love to have you join this aspect of what it means to be a part of a church and to be a part of Ridgepoint. So thank you so much for being involved. All right, so our guide for this series has been Old Testament prophet by the name of Habakkuk. And when Habakkuk writes this book, he is writing at a time that it is a very difficult season to be a Hebrew. This is a time when the nation of Israel is in complete turmoil. There is lawlessness, godlessness. There has been generations of broken, corrupt leaders. There are invading nations. There is poverty setting in. There is hunger. There is hopelessness. Like, this is not a good season. There have been moments in the nation of Israel where they have been on top. This is not one of those moments. And so part of what's happening right now is that because of that, and all that Habakkuk is not only personally experiencing, but what he is seeing his people endure, is he is going to God and kind of flipping the script of what a prophet does. A prophet in the Old Testament had primarily one job. It was to bring the messages of God to the ears of the people. Well, because of everything that's going on right now with the people and how the nation is kind of upside down and falling apart, Habakkuk flips the script and literally becomes his name, which means to wrestle. And he starts wrestling with God by flipping his responsibility. So instead of going, hey, God, what do you want to say to the people? He's saying, hey, God, here's what the people are questioning about you. And he really begins to put God in many respects on trial, questioning his character, his promises, his goodness, his presence, his listening ear, his attentiveness. And he really says, all right, God, instead of me saying, hey, here's what God says to you, everybody, here's what everybody has to say and question of you. And so we said that as Habakkuk begins to do this, like, this is not unfamiliar from many of the places that all of us have been as well. Places in our own life that maybe we would describe as a season of going into a dip of despair, kind of like Habakkuk and the nation is right now. They're in this season of despair. Where are you, God? How long, God? Don't you even care, God? And if you remember last week, we said there's a couple of things that you can do when you're in the dip of despair. One of the things we can do, if you think about kind of everything is supposed to always go up and to the right, well, your spiritual journey doesn't do that. So if you think about your spiritual journey going up and then you go into this kind of dip and you're like, okay, what do I do now? Well, you got one of four options of what to do when we find ourselves in a dip. So really quick, just to review, we said option number one is you can conclude to go back to an easier place in your time with God. And when you're climbing Everest, there's 4 different camps, 5 if you include base camp. And every camp gets progressively harder and more challenging to camp at and to get to. And so sometimes spiritually what we can do is we can decide, you know what, I'm just going to go back to base camp. I'm going to go back to a time when Jesus just made more sense, where it was easier. This is where we go in kind of the plastic, phony mode of Christianity, where everything's always good. We don't wrestle with the difficult things. We don't talk about the difficult things. We don't want to deal with the difficult things. We just kind of create this plastic version of our faith. That's one option. The other option is we just quit mountaineering altogether. We just decide, you know what, this is way too difficult. God does not make enough sense. I'm done. I'm out. And we literally just cash it all in. We walk away from him. We walk away from the church. We walk away from his people, and we just call it quits. Another option is that we just recreate God and do an easier version. Last week we said it would kind of be like hiking up Bittersweet and concluding that we stood at the top of Everest. Like, nope, not hardly. Or hiking up the dunes and considering it Everest. Well, we'll go up something much smaller and consider it much bigger. This is where we recreate God into a different version of himself. It was where we look at who he describes himself to be and all of his complexity in the scriptures, and we go, you know what? That doesn't make sense. I don't like it. And so we just redefine him, and we start taking things out of the Bible, taking attributes and characteristics, including and especially the difficult ones about who God is. We take them away from him, and we just turn him into something different that's more manageable, more predictable, and fits more into our box of what we want God to be like. There's a whole lot of that going on in the church world right now, because God, frankly, is too complex for us to just put in a box, and so it's a lot easier at times to just recreate him into a different version. The fourth option is what Habakkuk does, is we determine to wrestle with God. As we say, all right, God, I'm going to do what Habakkuk did, and I'm going to essentially put you on trial. I'm going to talk to you about your character. I'm going to question you. I'm going to ask you questions that I don't even know that I'm allowed to ask, but I'm going to bring them all to your ear, and I'm going to wrestle with you. And I know this too. Like some of you, I'm not going to assume that we're all following Jesus right now. I mean, some of you might go, hey, I don't even know yet if there is a God. I don't even know if I would consider myself a follower. And some of you might say, the reason I don't know that I believe there's a God yet is because I'm already in the dip. You might go, I'm not like following him and then I went into a dip. I'm in a dip, and because of that dip, because my life went upside down, I'm actually wondering, how can there be a God that let this happen? So my hesitation to even believe in him is the fact that I'm already in the pit. And I would just say this to you. What if your dip is not evidence that he doesn't exist, but it's the very place you'll meet him if you push into it? And so this is exactly where Habakkuk is still at. We left him last week in the dip, and he's still there. One of the things I wanted to make sure to do in this series is not just run past the moments of the dip too quickly, because that makes it feel like, hey, when life falls apart, it's just going to turn around tomorrow. Like the sun will come out tomorrow. Like there is no spot in this chapter or the chapter after where Annie and her crew come out and start singing. It's more like tomorrow's going to get worse than today. Like it's not getting better. And as Habakkuk looks on the horizon, things are only getting worse. And so here's where he jumps right back in. He's already questioned God, laid out his accusations, even his challenge of God's character. In chapter 2, verse 1, he says this: I will stand then at my watch, and I will station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give this complaint. Think, when he says, I will stand at the ramparts, I want you to think like a castle wall, and think the walkway at the top of a castle wall. What he's saying is, I'm going to stand at the tallest, highest place of the wall of the city, and I'm going to look out. Why do you stand at the highest place of the city? For perspective. To look, to wait, to see what's on the horizon. So Habakkuk in chapter 1 has laid out his accusations against God. He has thrown his challenges at God. He has put up his questions. And then he says, and now I'll wait. I will stand on the ramparts and I will watch. And I will listen in hopes that you will say something back. Because part of the problem with the dip and the challenge, many times over that I have been there, has been this. Not just where is God, but why is he not saying anything? And sometimes the hardest thing to do is to continue to figure out, how do I pursue him when he won't talk? Like, listen, Jesus, I've said this to him before. I will follow you through anything, but just don't be silent. Talk to me. So we're going to do a song right now for just a minute. Maybe it feels like a little bit of a weird place because it's going to be right in the middle of the message. But it's because sometimes we read stories in the Bible and we strip the humanity out of these people. Habakkuk was a very real man that lived at a very real time, struggling through very real pain like you and I do. And it's easy to kind of take all the humanity out of it. But here's a man who was, I believe, standing on the ramparts saying to God, say something, because I'm a little bit on the brink of giving up on you. So I want you to just listen to this for a minute and kind of let the song take us emotionally to where Habakkuk may have been.
Say something, I'm giving up on you. I'll be the one if you want me to. Anywhere I would have followed you. Say something, I'm giving up on you. And I'm feeling so small. It was over my head. I know nothing at all. And I will stumble and fall. will swallow my pride. You're the one that I love when I'm saying goodbye. Say something, I'm giving up on you. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to you. Anywhere I would have followed you. Oh, say something, I'm giving up on you. Say something, I'm giving up on you. Say something.
In the church world, sometimes we will say things like, the best is yet to come, or our best days are in front of us. But what do you say to somebody whose actually worst is yet to come? Because we've all lived through different seasons of life where the truth is, if somebody would have said to you at the beginning of the year, this is going to be your best year yet, midway through the year, you would have said, this has been my worst year ever. I mean, the truth is, for some of us, this next year, if I were to say, hey, for all of you, the best is yet to come. The better days are in front of you than are behind you. The truth is, for some of us, this next year is going to be our worst year. For some of us, the best is not to come this next year. For some of us, the worst is to come this next year. And I think sometimes we can get so focused in the church world and just in life in general on hype that we miss hope. And the problem is hype, it leaves really quickly. When the event is over, when the moment is over, when the rally is over, when the passion is over. And it's not that I want us to be depressed people going, oh gosh, what if this next year is just horrible and awful? But I don't want us ever to just be so manufacturing of an attempt to be happy that we create hype and we miss hope, because hype leaves and it leaves quickly. But hope is what can sustain us in the middle of anything. Hope is what has substance. Hope is what has foundation. Hope is what gives us the ability to say in the middle of any storm, no matter how painful you are, my God is bigger, my God is greater, and he has good plans. Hope is what gives us the ability to stand up when life falls apart. But sometimes we prefer hype, because hype has an ability to make us feel better a lot faster, where hope sometimes takes a little bit longer, and it doesn't have quite the same feel, especially because the place where hope begins is defining reality. True hope has to start first by saying what is and what isn't, and that's what Habakkuk is doing, is he's essentially defining reality right now. Saying, God, things are not good, and you don't seem very good, and you actually seem to be acting and functioning opposite of what I thought was your character and your nature. That's why in chapter 1, he even begins to challenge God based on his very character. And so he's defining reality and throwing these questions out before God and saying, and so now I'm waiting. I'm waiting to see what is the answer that I'm going to get. And here's the thing, God does speak. And he speaks to him just like he did last week in chapter 1. I don't know how long Habakkuk stood and essentially on the ramparts and just waited for God to speak, but at some point God did speak back to him. The problem is that what God says back to him in chapter 2 isn't that much easier to hear and to put your arms around than it was in chapter 1. So if you go back to the text, and we're going to be here for a little bit still, so if you can kind of keep your finger in the chapter 2, verse 2 and 3. And then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that the herald may run with it. He's like, listen, I'm going to talk, I'm going to say something, and this is going to be important, so get it down because everybody's going to need to hear it. He says, for the revelation awaits an appointed time, and it speaks of the end, and it will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it, it will certainly come, and it will not delay. So here's what God says to him. Habakkuk, yeah. I hear your complaint. I hear your pain. I have an answer. I have a resolve. I'm going to change things around, but there is an appointed time, and this is not it. So this is where it gets really hard. Though it linger, what did he say? Wait. Do me a favor, look at somebody next to you real quick. Would you do it? And just say this. Say, I hate waiting. Yeah, don't we? We hate to wait. Nobody likes to wait for anything. Waiting is the worst. I mean, waiting, like right now, I ordered shower doors for our new house from Home Depot. It's supposed to get there in like 3 days. It's been like a week and a half, and I'm freaking out. The other day, I was on the phone with Home Depot. I'm like, where are my doors? And Nicole's like, babe, we have another shower. Calm down. It's okay. But like, we just don't like to wait for anything. But how about when the waiting is a little bit more desperate? Years ago, like 11 years ago, I go in for a regular doctor's appointment, and then I get a call within a day. I get a call back from the gal that worked at the front desk, and she goes, hey, I just calling you back to let you know, like your blood work was off. Something was different and not right. And I was like, oh, what was wrong? She goes, oh, your white blood cell count is off. I was like, oh, well, what does that mean? And she goes, well, it can mean anything from an anomaly to leukemia. I was like, oh, that's a big range. I go, coming right back in. And she goes, no, we don't have another opening for a week. I was like, oh. Like, that was a horrible week to wait. And then I go back in a week later, and I get my blood drawn again. And they're like, oh, anomaly. So, however, your blood sugar's been high twice in a row. That's how I found out I had diabetes. Never been so happy to find out I had diabetes when I realized it wasn't leukemia, though. So that's kind of a weird good day. But like that waiting, right? So what do you do when it's more desperate? Like, how do we wait in those moments? Because those are the moments where when we're waiting, God isn't just even frustrating for his absence. He seems frustrating for his apathy. Because the waiting is all about asking God when and having no clear answer. Like, okay, God, when will the unfairness end? When will my marriage turn around? When's there going to be 2 lines on the pregnancy test? When am I going to overcome the anxiety that's been overcoming me? You know, even the why questions are ultimately when questions, if you think about it. Like, hey, why do bad things happen is when is good going to prevail? Why did they die is when are you going to bring any sense out of this loss and maybe some beauty out of those ashes? Why did I get sick is when are you going to heal me? And when are you going to fix this? And so the question is, how do we survive in the dip? Because it would be great if it was an hour. It'd be great if we had these moments that just came and then they were gone. You're like, whew, check that off the list. Most of mine never seem to pass that quickly. And some of you have been living in a season of pain and dip and frustration and confusion with God over and over and over and over and over. So how do we not become like Aaron and essentially begin to cut ourselves off from God and mutilate ourselves spiritually when we're in those moments? Well, if you go back to the mountain climbing analogy and you go back to Mount Everest, there are a couple different ways that you can climb a mountain. You can do top roping, you can do belay, you can do lead climbing, but almost every way to climb any mountain requires you to be clipped in. It requires you to have some form of rope that keeps you safe and keeps you attached to the mountain, to other people. Like, there are very few ways to climb without being roped in. There are some. Matter of fact, Alex Honnold, who is a freestyle climber, is kind of setting the records right now for doing it. But I anticipate that it's someday or another, everybody who has climbed like him and done free soloing like he did in 2016 up El Cap, eventually they don't make it. Because you've got to be 10 for 10, 100% of the time. So there are people that do this, but very few. Most of the time when you climb, you have to be clipped in. Matter of fact, going up Everest, when you hit the Hillary step, that's one of the spots where you have to be clipped in, which is interesting because you don't have to be clipped in on every single part and every single route going up Mount Everest. Like, think about this. You can even get to the top. Like, you can stand on the summit, the topmost part of the entire world that you can get to as a human being, and you don't have to be clipped in there, but you do when you go through the dip. Because the Hillary step on the south side of Mount Everest is pretty sketchy. We've got a picture right here. You'll see very quickly why it is you got to be clipped in. You can see there, that's a pretty small margin for error. Anybody going to risk it without clipping in? Be like, nah, I got this one, I'm good. No, this is one of the spots on the mountain where if you're going to climb it, you've got to clip in. So I would suggest to you that one of the ways that when we're in the spiritual season of dip, that we're going to survive it is we've also got to learn how to clip in. And I think there's a few things that we've got to figure out how to clip into. So number one, I would say this. When we're in the dip, the one way we survive it is we have to clip into other people. If you go back again to some pictures on Mount Everest, you will see that there's just this reality that there is a shared experience that when you go up to the summit of Mount Everest, everybody has to go through this one spot on the south side. You don't get to the summit of Everest without going through the Hillary step, which you can see right here. It gets ridiculously crowded, but that means that if you've ever stood on the top of Everest, which I'm just curious, anybody? I mean, it's a decent-sized church, there's a chance. Okay, so here's the thing though. You and I, when we talk about summiting Everest or going through the Hillary step, that's just theory. I've never been there. You've never been there. But if you've been there, you've been there. If you know, you know. Which means you have a common and a shared experience with all these people and the 7,200 others that have stood at the top of Mount Everest. The church should be a similar kind of experience. Because none of us will get to higher places in our walk with God without going through the dip. And yet for some reason when we come to church is we almost want to downplay that and hide that and put on the pretty face like everything is good. Like we don't have those questions, we don't have those struggles, we don't have those doubts. And the irony is we actually all do. And we all have these experiences. How much more powerful if we shared them with one another and created a safe place where we could talk about it, where we could go, yeah, you too, me too. Oh, I know because we know. And instead, so often what we do is we journey through the seasons of dip like Habakkuk, where we cry in secret, where we question God alone, where we hide our doubts and our frustrations. And I think it's why sometimes we'll even have stories of people that we loved and we journeyed with in the church that somebody disappeared and you're like, what happened? Why'd they just fade off the scene? Because they wrestled alone and you didn't know it and they didn't tell anybody and they didn't invite them in. And the dip overwhelmed them. The church should be the number one place in all of creation where it is okay to not be okay. Where we can come in here and we can drop all the facade, all the guard, and we can go deep to a grimy place sometimes. With our questions, our doubts, our frustrations, our anger with God. And where we can find safety to do that with one another. And we can have no fear that we'll be questioned, judged, pushed away, or criticized because we've got doubts and questions that can't be answered. I mean, think about sometimes even the culture we create in the church. We'll walk in on a Sunday morning and we'll often say, hey, how are you? And the response is, yeah. But is it always? No. Like, what if we created a space where you didn't feel like you had to go, oh, it's good, and you just bury the pain inside? Like, imagine a scenario where you walk in and you're like, hey, how are you? You're like, well, I mean, to be honest, pretty crappy. I mean, I kind of hate my job. I think my boss hates me. I've been drinking a little too much. I've definitely been drinking way too much lately. My kids, I haven't seen them a lot. My wife and I can't stop fighting. I've cried out to God. He seems like he doesn't care, and he hasn't answered him forever. And to be honest, lately, I've wondered if I want to be alive. You'd be like, I'm going to go find Josh. I'll be right back. Right? I mean, because we don't know what to do with those kind of moments, and we don't know what to do with that kind of rawness and authenticity and realness. But the irony is, if you're genuinely pursuing God, you have been there. So why doesn't that become shared among us? Why isn't there a kind of culture and environment that exists within the church unlike any other place where you can walk in and be the truest, realest version of yourself in your pain and your frustration and your questions and your doubts and know that I am safe here because I'm going to be clipped in. They're not going to go, well, this isn't really a place for those kind of questions, that kind of doubt, that kind of honesty. No, we go, no. This is exactly where that needs to happen. You know, that's one of the reasons that we do small groups here. Like we don't have small groups just so we can have one more thing that we do. So we can have one more ministry. So we can have one more point of data with metrics and numbers. Small groups is intended to be a place like this, where we clip into one another, where we have this kind of real relationship and friendship, and it grows over time. And it's not perfect every time. Like some of you might, like I've heard this before, and this has been my story at times too. Like, hey, I tried to clip into a group once. I went to church and tried to nobody called me back, or I got in a group and they were all weird, or maybe you were weird, I don't know. But it's like, it didn't work, I didn't fit, we didn't mesh, the group fell apart. Great, keep trying. That's why professional mountaineers take so serious their climbing partners. They don't just put out a list on Craigslist, a little ad. Hey, anybody want to be my climbing partner up Everest? No, you watch somebody. You get to know them. You determine, hey, we're going to clip into one another to go up the mountain because I'm going to trust my life into your life and your life into my life. Like, so keep trying. Like, keep trying to figure out, like, who do I journey with and how do I not do this alone? But I'll just tell you this. If you're journeying alone, like if your primary experience of Ridgepoint is you come on Sunday, you take it in, and you go home and you're staying largely unknown and disconnected, that may work for a season. But I promise you, hit the dip, it becomes lethal. It is critical that we clip into one another. Why do you think Jesus called this thing not a group, but a body? Because we are absolutely necessary for one another. I need you. We need each other. Like that's part of how God designed this whole thing. And I believe that one of the only ways that we make it through the dip is that part of what we have to learn to clip into is one another and have the relationships that are genuine and honest and real, where we're not just doing church on Sunday, going home and staying largely disconnected and unknown, but we say, no. This thing is made to be engaged with one another, and I'm made to be engaged with each other. And we clip in. And I have some of those relationships. I mean, I've got some buddies that don't even live in the state that have been doing life with me now for 30 years, and they are my people. I mean, they know moments and in seasons where it's difficult. These are the people that I go to. I've got a buddy, Matt, Jeremy, Joe, Aaron. Like those guys know more about me, I mean, probably than me. I mean, those guys know everything. Matt, he's a guy that I call, and there is no holds barred. Like he and I, like he is a climbing partner in this life. And my question to you is, who's that for you? Who's that person or who's those people for you? Because part of what is so fundamentally critical when you're climbing Everest is to know I've got to clip into other people. Matter of fact, one more picture, if I didn't put this one up yet. This is a picture of them actually clipped in, you can see with one another. As they're going up that Hillary step right there, they're not just clipped into a line, they're clipped into one another as well. And it's critical that I think you and I figure out how to do the same. You know, I told you a minute ago, one of my fears is that one day Alex Honnold, who does all this amazing free soloing, I'm going to read an article that says Alex died. Tobin Sorensen was a famous mountaineer, and he free soloed once, and on a small bouldering trip, he fell. Professional climber, fell, that was it. And that is the countless story over and over and over and over again for mountaineers that free solo. It's impressive, but it's also lethal. And I don't think it's any less true in the church world and in our spiritual journey. I think when we climb solo and we're not clipped into one another, especially when the moments of dip come, you're standing on a thin edge just like you are in the Hillary step. And it's a matter of inches that determines whether or not you make it. I think the other thing we've got to clip into is not just clip into one another, but I would say it this way. I think we need to learn how to also, in the moments of the dip, we got to clip into a picture of a better future to come. And I don't mean this in a hype sense either. Like, oh, it's just going to get better. It's all going to be good. It's all going to turn around. You know, Aaron tells a story in a couple of his interviews. Aaron Ralston, the boulder guy in the beginning, he tells a story that there was one point nearing the 5 days where he was kind of in that state where he was in and out, dehydrated. He was malnourished at this point, like all the pain, the blood loss, where he's kind of conscious and then not and kind of going back and forth. And he said it was a point where he was about to give up and just call it quits. And he said this was what helped him have the final push to get out and even do the horrific of cutting off his own arm, is he started to picture himself as a single-armed dad. The funny thing is, he didn't have a wife at the time, no kids, so this wasn't him drawing on memories that he had. This is him creating a future that didn't even exist at the moment. But he started to picture himself as a dad with kids, and he just had one arm. And that's what gave him the ability, he says, and this kind of drive in the moment to figure out, okay, how am I going to get out of this scenario? And that's what gave him the strength to even do the horrific and cut off his own arm and get out of it, is he developed a picture in his mind of a better future to come. So part of what God will do for Habakkuk is also help him develop a different picture of a better time that's to come. If you go back to the text, we see this in verse 16. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And remember, God had just told him a minute ago, there is an appointed time, and though it linger, wait. So he's telling him now about the appointed time. We don't know when it's going to come. It's not going to come when Habakkuk wants it to come, because God's already told him, you're going to have to wait for this. But this is the appointed time that he's telling him will come, when the Babylonians aren't going to always be on the top, raiding and pillaging and destroying everything around them. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And so woe to him who gives drink to his neighbors, pouring it from the wineskin until they are drunk. So you talk about taking advantage of other people, which is exactly what the Babylonians are doing. Woe to him so that he can then use this to gaze on their naked bodies. You will be filled with shame instead of glory. So now the tides are beginning to turn for the people that have been doing this, he's saying. And now it's your turn. So drink and let your own nakedness be exposed. The cup from the Lord's right hand is coming around you, and disgrace will cover your glory. The violence that you have done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, and your destruction of animals will terrify you. For you have shed human blood and have destroyed lands and cities and everyone in them. So here's what he's saying. Habakkuk, there's a moment where things will turn. Like, there is a better day to come. The Babylonians won't always be on top. Like, this pain is not always going to be your present day reality. So Habakkuk, part of what you've got to do is you have to lock your mind into the fact that though it will linger, it will not come in the time frame you want. There is a better day to come. So here's my question though. What do you say to somebody that the better day doesn't seem to come? Because I mentioned briefly last week about one of the moments that I most wrestled with God was when I did Patty's funeral, just weeks before I was supposed to do her wedding. Well, that story is a friend of mine, Lee, who years ago after he had first got married, he was hit by a train 6 months into his marriage, going across, no rail, no lights, train hits his car, puts him in the hospital, fights for his life for months. Finally, he's going to survive, but he's in a full body cast for the next 6 months. So imagine that, a few months into marriage, and his wife now is taking care of him completely. I mean, literally, full body cast in a bed for 6 months, feeding him, cleaning him, bathing him, everything for 6 months. Lee will live for the rest of his life with some degree of pain that he just can't avoid. Sometimes it's horrific and it's crippling. Sometimes it's manageable, but it's always there. Lee will then go on. Years later, he and his wife, great marriage, kind of the icon in the church. Everybody loved them. They loved everybody. Started a prison ministry, started helping prisoners, men and women, kind of get back into life, back on their feet on the other side of prison. And in part of that relationship with these prisoners, his wife at the time developed a relationship with one of them that got released. She had an affair, left Lee. So then Lee meets Patty. And Patty and Lee were the kind of couple that everybody that knew them was like, man, it should have been you guys from day one. Like, you guys are just a glove in a hand. I mean, perfect fit for one another. And so Lee came to me, and after years of overcoming the betrayal of his last marriage, he comes to me and says, hey, Patty and I are going to get married, and I want you to do the wedding. Super excited for the two of them. And then one night while Lee and some friends were hanging out, and Patty was with them, they went back to the house. Lee wanted to show his buddies a new car he just got. They went to the garage and did not know that her ex-husband had broken into the house and waited for Patty at the front door, and the minute she opened the door, he took her life. And then walked into Lee's bedroom and took his own. I don't know how to tell Lee, hey, the sun will come out tomorrow. Because the experience of Lee's life has been moments of respite, followed by these horrific seasons of the Babylonians taking everything away from him. So if my attempt was just to tell Lee, hold on until 2028, it'll get better, I could be lying. What if in 2028, Lee has another encounter with the Babylonians? So when I say hold on to a better day to come, here's what we've got to learn to hold on to. that we presently live in an order that one day will pass away. And this life, though in its 75 or plus years seems to be everything, is a speck on the map of eternity. In the book of Revelation, this is the picture we're given about what's to come. And then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them and be their people, and God himself will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eye. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain." This is one of the best phrases in all the Bible right here. For the old order, everybody say old order. The old order of things has passed away. And he who is seated on the throne said, "I am making everything new." Do you realize we're living right now in the old order? When Jesus says one day the old order will pass away, this is the old order. This is the old order where we get cancer, where people are abused, where we suffer, where there's war, where there's violence, where there's death, where there's depression, where there's anxiety. This is the old order. Here's the promise of God. Much like he made to Habakkuk, there is a better day to come. And though it linger, wait for it. And God's promise is this order will not be the final order. It is our order now, but one day this order goes away and a new order begins. Do you realize Revelation paints Jesus right now as doing one thing? Sitting down on his throne. And a king sits on his throne for only one of two reasons. All is well in the land, or he is patiently waiting. And it is not well in the land, so he is patiently waiting. But the scriptures also paint a picture that one day he stands up from his throne. And when he stands up from his throne, he is coming back to put his foot down in the middle of all the nonsense and the brokenness of this order and saying, "It is done," and the new order begins. And when that new order begins, it forever wipes away every brokenness, every tear, every pain, every loss, every dip, every Babylonian army to invade. It wipes it all away forever. That's the better day that we look forward to. And we don't walk around with our head in the sky. We're here now. And God says, you're here now to have impact now. So we live with impact in this world now. But our hope is this world is not the end for us. That our God, because of the cross, has purchased a better order. And that order is going to come. Even if this life and this order strips everything away from you, there is a better order to one day come. And may God forbid that that does not give us the hope to endure the dip when we clip into that picture of a better day to come. Here's the last thing I would give you to clip into. I think in these moments of dip, we have to also learn how to clip into confessions of where it is that we can grow as a climbing person and get better. In 2016, the first woman to ever summit Mount Everest without oxygen is a woman named Melissa Arndt. Now, there's been just over 7,000 people that have summited Everest. Only 3% of them have ever done it without oxygen. Once you get to 8,000 feet, it's almost impossible to breathe anymore. Or 8,000 meters. It's impossible to breathe anymore, hardly. And so most people do not try to climb Everest without having supplemental oxygen. Very small group of them have. And so Melissa became the first American ever as a woman to summit Everest without oxygen. But here's what a lot of people don't know about her story, is that took her 6 times to finally do it. In one article, this is what she says. "Every attempt that I made up the mountain, I grew as a climber. And in the end, I realized this: you don't have to be exceptional to do this, but you do, listen, you do have to have exceptional perseverance." I think part of what we have to figure out in these moments of dip is, okay, God, do not let this moment be wasted. How is it that I can actually grow in what it means to be a follower of yours in this world, in this moment, and even in the dip? Go back to Habakkuk for one more time. You go back to verse 4, and this is what God said to Habakkuk. "See, the enemy is always puffed up, and his desires are not upright." Now he juxtaposes this, "but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness." Part of what God is saying to Habakkuk is, listen, you're about to enter a season right now of waiting. And in that waiting, you got to determine one of two things. Will you be like the Babylonians, whose God is their own strength, or will you be the righteous who live by faith? And when you and I find ourselves in a place of a dip, when life doesn't make sense, God doesn't make sense, there's an opportunity for us to become better climbers. There's an opportunity for us to say, okay, God, what in my life right now can improve, can develop, can grow? How can I trust you more? What needs to get out of my life? Do you know that of all the mountains in the world, there's only 14 of them that breach 8,000 meters? And of that 14, only 39 people have actually scaled all of them. I mean, these are the hardest mountains to climb in the entire world. Here's what I love the most, though. Of that 39 people that have climbed the 14 tallest mountains in the world, there's only 2 people that have climbed all of them twice. And the 2 people that have climbed all of them twice are former Sherpas. The Sherpas are the people that on mountains carry up your gear. They go set all the lead lines ahead of you. They take you up. They take you back down. They try to make sure that you make it up there. They're the people that basically get you to the top and get you back down safely. And I think it's no coincidence that the 2 people that have climbed all of the tallest mountains in the world 2 times over are former Sherpas, because that means that this is 2 men that have done this 1,000,000 times. They have figured out where to step. And they've gone, nope, not there. Well, we should take this route. No, we learned that's not the right route. They have climbed mountains so many times that they just got better at it every single time. They wouldn't have done this 2 times over if they just tried to climb the same way they ever first started climbing when they began. When we're in a moment of a dip, this is an opportunity for us to go, God, how do you want to change me? How can I be the righteous that lives by faith? Like when we come into these moments, I think part of how we survive is we realize we don't just clip into people. We don't just clip into a better future to come. We go, okay, God, I don't want this moment wasted in my life. And if I'm being honest, I have been in dip moments where God has met me, and it's been great with He and He's gotten me through, but I've wasted them. And on the other side, I was largely the same person that I was when I went into the dip, because I didn't wrestle in that place and say, okay, God, not just how to get me out of this, how do you transform me in this place? I don't think in some of the dip seasons that I've been in, I was determined as much to let that dip form me as I was just to try to not let it destroy me. But when you're in a moment of dip, you have the chance to actually be transformed into a better climber. To say to God, all right, God, what are the things right now that are keeping me from being more who you made me to be? And I would just say, if you're in a moment of dip, or the next time you go into a moment of dip, like, don't enter that and then exit that being the same person you were on the other side of it. Like, go into it and say, all right, God, this is a season and a moment in my life where I want to get rid of all bitterness, all jealousy, all addiction, all perversion, all anger, all hatred, all judgment, or any other broken bit of poison in my life that is keeping me from fully being who you want me to be. I want it gone, God. So expose me and get rid of it, that I would be like you challenged Habakkuk and the people to be those who live by faith in you, the righteous who live by faith. And not like the Babylonians whose strength is in their own might, whose God is in their own power. God, transform me in these places. Matter of fact, here's what, would you do this with me? Would you stand this morning before we go into our last song? And I would ask you to just do this. Just take your hands and just put them on your own head. And I want you to just pray this prayer with me. It's going to be really simple, but just say this: Dear God, would you give me a new mind? Would you give me a new perspective? And would you give me a new way at looking at my circumstances? Amen. Listen, there is a summit available. On the other side of every dip, there is always a summit. But you got to wrestle through it. And sometimes you got to wait in it. But you have got to clip in. You've got to clip into other people. You've got to clip into the hope that this world is not the final order. And you got to clip in to say, God, don't let this moment in my life be wasted. Transform me, transform me, transform me. That on the other side of it, I would be more like Jesus. Not just thankful I didn't die in it, but make me more like Him. This morning, we're going to have a prayer team up here again, just like we did last week. I'm going to invite them up right now, as a matter of fact. So if you're a part of the prayer team or part of people that have agreed to pray, would you just come up front or even in the balcony up there? And I just want to invite you, whether it's during this last song or whether it's afterwards as the room kind of quietly leaves, if you need to just come up and let us be with you, pray with you, just maybe even listen to you. If something got stirred, don't just run back into the rest of your week. This is part of how you clip in. Like have the courage this morning to come up and say, can't do it alone. Don't want to do it alone. Even if it's just a simple moment of prayer, let us serve you in that way before you go into the rest of the week. Because again, I promise you, on the other side of every dip, there is a summit. But you just got to wrestle. And you got to wait. Even when it hurts, God will take you to the other side if you trust him. So God, I just pray that you would help us to continue to learn to walk with you in the places and in the moments and in the situations that would have us to do the opposite and run from you. Thank you, God, that you give us very real people who have lived these very real moments just like we do. And we can see from their life the full story, where sometimes we only see the chapters in our life. We can't see the next chapter, we see the one we're in. So thank you that we get to see people like Habakkuk. We get to see all the chapters. And would that inspire us with hope and confidence that you are so good to be trusted so thoroughly that no matter what we go through, we can say with confidence, your plans are good. This world is not the end. There is one day a better order to come. In Jesus' name, amen.
will sing till the morning has come, and my heart, it burns only for you. You are all I want, and my soul waits only for you. And I will sing till the miracle comes. I will only sing your praise. Oh, I will only sing your praise. Oh, I will only sing your praise. Oh. Even when the morning comes, I'll praise you. Even when the fight is won, I'll praise you. Even when my time on earth is done, louder than I'll sing your praise. I will only sing your praise.
So just let me pray over you before we go into our week. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and may he give you peace. Jesus Christ, Lord of heaven and earth, be close to us, I pray, as we go into this week. Be close to us in our joy. Be close to us in our sorrow. Help us as we walk with you hand in hand and as we wrestle with you fist to fist. In either place, I pray you meet us and take us further. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. May you go and may you wrestle, and we'll see you next Sunday.